Hey everyone, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on Those Not Afraid number 4. Now, I've been really enjoying this series. It's by Carl Starks and artist Patrick Piazzalunga, colorist Marco Bracco, and letterer Jim Campbell. And yeah, I was enjoying the hell out of issue 1, issue 2. I really enjoyed issue 3 as well. Now, issue 4 came out, and this is basically the final issue of this story, though I'm not 100% sure if it is, just based on the way the contents of the story is done. Now, now here's the thing. My thoughts on this would be different depending on how it goes. If this series gets a continuation, then my opinion on this issue is a lot more positive because it sets up things for the future. But if this is actually the final issue for this story and ultimately for this arc and we don't really get to see these characters again, I am personally disappointed in how this series ends, but we'll go through it for the whole thing. So, it begins with this school bus crash. It's basically from that character that we saw in the previous issue, who's going to go after the two serial killers and essentially try beat their record. And he does like this mass killing, but it's essentially revealed that, well, his mass killings don't actually count because that's considered a spree killer rather than a serial killer, and he's annoyed by that. So, that makes sense. Anyway, one of the things that slightly bothered me. So like, there's a moment where the podcaster, she's talking with Mark's wife, and she reveals that the home intruder is only murdering criminals and stuff, paroled murderers, sex offenders, foster families that have assault charges against him. He's not a serial killer, he's a vigilante. Now, here's the thing. Once again, if this series continued, I wouldn't really have a problem with that. But this reveal that the home intruder is actually a vigilante changes things, right? Because now you're like, wait, so maybe he is kind of like somewhat a decent person-ish. Like maybe. I mean, obviously, he's taking things maybe too far for people with, I don't know, like assault charges. But depends on what kind of assault, I guess. But anyway, we're not talking about the actual morality of this. It's more just like this reveal. It feels like that it's coming a bit out of nowhere, and I feel like it's supposed to be there for this podcaster to not eventually hate Dodson. Maybe that's what's supposed to come from this, because here's the thing. I'm not 100% sure about this because we know for a fact that the lady killer, he's a bit of a psycho, and yes, he loves Lucinda, his wife. And Dodson and him, they talk about that in front of the podcaster's house. But then, and they get into a fight. But then, he says, like, here's the thing, like, he hesitates to kill him. And I don't really understand where the hesitation is coming from if he's a vigilante who goes against bad guys. Like, why did he hesitate, right? Like, did he form a connection with Mark? Like, does he actually feel like he has a connection with him, despite the fact that Mark would definitely be someone who would end up on his list, right? Or is Mark also secretly someone who's also going after bad people? I don't think that's the case whatsoever. Like Dodson saying, like, your name showed up on my list today, that makes perfect sense to me, right? So I do think there is some, like, precedence for the idea that Dodson would be a vigilante, so I'm not going to say it came out of nowhere, because there was some, like, mystery around his list and what that list could mean. It's more just, it feels strange as a reveal for the final issue, if it's the final issue, Because the fact that he is a vigilante doesn't actually matter in this series if it wraps up now. Because the fact of the matter is, like, regardless of us knowing he's a vigilante or not a vigilante, that fight between Mark and Dodson was probably going to happen anyway, because there were kind of subtle things showcasing that he thought of the podcaster as a friend. And that was already well put. So I'm not 100% sure what the vigilante reveal was entirely for, unless it's for the series continuing. So that's kind of my issue with that. Now, I do feel like there is a lot of good payoff in this in this issue. We get to see more of Lucinda's feelings about Mark, which I thought was great. I feel like she's actually a pretty good character. And this new character who's kind of going crazy. He wasn't much of anything, to be honest. He's just kind of like a villain there to defeat, because I think he's supposed to be like the opponent to get rid of in this issue. So like he's more just an obstacle, and I kind of wish there was even less attention given to him, because I would have preferred there to be more conversations between Mark and Dodson. Like I think that would have been better, because after their fight, which I thought was pretty good, I thought that was really great. We see that other character is basically trying to strangle the podcaster, and yeah, they basically attack him together, and he seems to be pretty strong, but you know, they don't really get to beat him. But what happens is essentially, the podcaster sees that Daniel is the person who is the intruder, so that reveal is done, right? But it would have been even better if we got to see more interactions between the two after that. Like the reveal itself doesn't really stand that much on its own, because they've already spent a bunch of time together. Like just like in the same way we got all of Lucinda's thoughts on what happens with Mark, I would have liked to see her response about what she found out about Daniel. So that would have been like better, but we don't really get that. We just see that she now knows, and that's it. Like I feel like if this was to be a complete story, there should have been like one more issue for like epilogue and all that stuff. Now the father, like her father coming in and beating the crap out of that guy, that was great. That was foreshadowed, him finally stepping onto his own, all of his guilt about not doing enough, all of that, and him just beating the crap out of him and headbutting him and destroying him pretty handily. Like I thought that was pretty good. Saying like, you know, get your hands off my daughter. I thought that was a good payoff for the little sprinkles that they've been putting through about the father. So that was nice. And I don't think there was really much more needed between them, because this is what was set up. Like what was set up wasn't really that they were going to have like a deep heart to heart. It was more set up that he was going to show his worth, not just to her, but to also the community at large as well. And he does do that because the people, like the policemen who decided to take away like the people who are going to protect his daughter, he punches them. Once again, like it's not that he needs to be in their good graces, but it's a great kind of depiction of like where he's at now, and that he's kind of secure in his ability to actually protect someone. So I thought that was good. Like I thought his part was the best part. Now, like there is also just one more page between Mark and Dodson, and he says like, you know, this is far from over. You broke the rules of our agreement, and you interfered, and you tried to kill me. The only way this ends is with me breaking the record, and you dead by a slow and terrible death. So now they're at odds and all that stuff, and once again, like this is set up for the future, but I'm honestly under the impression that this is the end of this story, so I'm genuinely confused. And then it also ends off on a cliffhanger with Cece, her getting kidnapped by the murder hole killer, and he's coming back out of the shadows because he's the one with the highest number. So it's definitely given the vibe that this series is going to continue, but you know, as an arc finish, it feels less satisfying, and that's kind of my issue with it. Like it feels like it finishes an arc, but the way it finishes an arc is kind of like shoehorning in this random villain character for all the characters to just kind of beat up. And I feel like, you know, all the other issues were still building up more tension between like Mark and Dodson and Cece and the wife. Like they were the main players, and having this final issue for this arc being this random guy didn't really work for me. Like he was just like this obstacle that was in the way that all the characters had to defeat in order to give like a sense of finality for the arc itself. But you know, like I was way more invested in Dodson and Mark's fight, and you know, like there is once again like indication there is going to be a continuation of it, but I still think an extended fight between those two would have just been better. Like I think that's enough. Like I don't think we needed this guy. Like I think it would have just been fine if Mark, you know, like because he wants to see Lucinda again, goes to Cece's house, and then he's about to like, you know, attack her, and then Dodson comes in the way and tries to protect her. And then we can have the final issue be more about Dodson and Mark's relationship instead of this random, you know, this random guy. And then instead of this random guy, but I guess, you know, I guess his father also needed to have a moment that showcases his value. Like that was also what was built up in the previous issues. So maybe that would have been a bit more difficult. Well, maybe Dodson can actually fail to beat Mark. Maybe like that moment where he shows a bit of sympathy, right, could have resulted in Mark getting the upper hand, and then him, being really like pissed off at both Dodson and the fact that he can't be with Lucinda. Then he goes after Cece, and that's when the father steps in and then beats the crap out of Mark. And but then essentially Mark and Dodson both get captured. You can still have that moment in the van. Not van, the police van. I don't know what you call it. You can have that moment where they're talking to each other and saying, this isn't over. It can have like even more of a sense of animosity as well, because like he's not going to blame the policeman for doing his job, right? Or, Cece's father. He's going to blame Dodson, and we can still have that same conversation there. So yeah, and then we can still have the father beating the crap out of the guy for not for taking off the police that are around Cece's house and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there was a better way to do it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like I don't know. I'm a bit bummed out because I really love the first 3 issues. Like I really do, and I feel like the pacing of this one was just way too fast. I feel like it needed one more issue to really wrap itself well. Like, I think if it was able to slow down, I think this introduction of this new character would have worked out well as well. Like, you could still have that same story beat, and you could have things just play out a bit longer so that the arc itself feels like it has a certain finality to it. So even if the story didn't continue, the arc itself would feel nice. But once again, even if the story does continue, like I don't think I would look at this whole arc as like an amazing arc. I do think this last issue sours it a bit because of its pacing issues and its decisions. Because I really do feel like this other character that they kind of shoehorned in doesn't, while it fulfills the roles it needs to fulfill to get the story beats moving. Story beats being Cece seeing Daniel, Mark getting captured and stuff, and Dodson getting captured and stuff, and the father having his moment. It fulfills all of those roles, right? So it's kind of like an efficient solution, but I'm not really looking for efficiency in a story. I wanted to also have like a certain emotional depth to it, and he just felt like an obstacle ultimately. And I think that's my main issue with this issue. But like all the moments of payoff and stuff, they work. And that's kind of the thing that's frustrating me, because it's like, I know these moments, like the conversation between Mark and Dodson would be perfectly great and fine and incredibly high quality. Like all these scenes as I'm like flipping through the book, they would all work really, really well. Even having that extra character in, if it was just given like one more issue, just to kind of breathe, just to have the whole thing breathe and not be so high paced. Yeah. So that's my opinion on this. I was a bit disappointed by this issue. Now the whole story, I still think the story overall is good. I think it's a good story. I think, because I'm more of a journey than the destinations kind of person. So I still think the story is good. But yeah, I don't think the ending is that great. I really do hope this story does continue, because I have a lot of faith in this writer just based on the first 3 issues. I really do think the first 3 issues are great. So I really do hope that all of this ability to foreshadow, right? Like to imply that Dodson and Mark are going to be at each other's throats, and the fact that Cece gets captured, maybe this is because the publisher was like, hey, you're getting around 2 for this. People are really enjoying this. So if that's the case, like I'm still going to be looking forward to it and picking up the next iteration of this. And I'm going to feel less soured by this final issue for this arc. So those are my thoughts for this issue. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, take care. Bye.